Hi, my name is Erica Effa, and I am the owner of Erica Tiwa Agency, where we help early to mid-stage direct-to-consumer, nonprofit, and tech service-based businesses get visible and scale through content. Today, I'm here with Eileen to talk about the art of storytelling in business.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Erica. So my name is Eileen Agata. I'm the co-founder and CEO of Be Blended. Be Blended is essentially an online marketplace that connects Black clients to freelance hairstylists that know how to work on Afro curly hair texture. So I'm super excited to have a good conversation today and looking forward to what the questions will hold.
Absolutely. All right, let's get started. So the first thing I want to ask you, can you share a memorable experience where storytelling played a pivotal role in your entrepreneurship journey?
Yeah, that's a good question. So the thing about storytelling is it's embedded in everything that you do. So maybe a good pivotal role would be when I started Be Blended. So I learned that there's a strength in being able to tell a story from a place of passion and authenticity and understanding. So I remember when I started Be Blended, I experienced the issue of going into hair salons and being turned away, and having to eventually tap someone on the shoulder to find a hairstylist in my community. I was like, excuse me, sorry, where'd you get your hair done? And it was always a friend of a friend of a sister of a sister of an aunt somewhere who lives in a basement. And I remember that was my experience. But then when I was able to now talk about, oh, this is what happened to me and why I'm in the world of hair care and business and software and Be Blended, it came from my own experience. And so I think me sharing that experience of how I started Be Blended and knowing about how I was able to now share my personal experience led to me being able to put it on paper and then share it with more people for them to now nod their heads and say, oh yeah, I experienced the same problem, which actually led us to collect over, I would say, 670 Black women data on this particular issue. And so it feels like a long-winded way to answer that question, but it was me being able to say my own experience because it was a lived experience to other people who resonated, and then that was able to get us to where we are today with our proprietary data.
No, that's amazing. And honestly, as a Black woman myself, what you're doing is so needed. I think we all have so many of these talents, but we need to be having it consolidated in one area. And for you to see the problem and ultimately, take that on and find a solution, I commend you for that.
Yeah,
absolutely. What do you believe are some of the key elements of, creating that compelling narrative for your business? Obviously, how to showcase that value that, hey, we all have these talents as hairstylists. Why do we need to have a centralized platform?
I would say when you're looking at it from a business lens, you kind of have to lay it out in a way where you talk about the problem, so in a passionate way that shows why you, and then go on to the solution and kind of explain why now. So it's very much so, for me in my case, I would talk about my experience, the Black women and men that I spoke to that were experiencing it, my personal upbringing and how that took an effect, as well as my mom immigrating from Nigeria to come here, learning about hairstyling, but then not knowing how to work on her own hair texture at cosmetology school. I would draw upon, like, this is why I'm the one that I'm telling this story and why you can have credibility in me. When you look on now the solution side, to bring them from, oh, this is a huge problem, to now this is a solution and this is why you should believe me. You'll now have to start bringing in your facts of why now is the right time to bring the solution to market. So I would say maybe in a really small takeaway size, it's why you and why now, and that typically correlates with the problem and then the solution.
Absolutely, absolutely. I know you touched on, your mom. Could you draw upon more of like an example specifically on that story that, you built out to basically roll out and explain what your business is?
Yeah. Okay. So it's so multi-layered. And I know we have a finite amount of time, but where I would bring in that story about my mom and her studying hairstyling at cosmetology school typically is not always at the forefront of when I tell my story. So when you're pitching, it really depends on who your audience is. If it's a one-on-one conversation where you don't have slides, this is also very different versus you meet someone and it's an elevator pitch, so you only have a certain amount of time to speak about things. I pick and choose when I actually share that story. So the way that I would go about my storytelling is I'd talk about my experience being turned away from hair salons, walking into 15 different hair salons in downtown Ottawa when I worked there, and all of them turned me away, and half of them were hostile. That right there might jar you, saying, oh my gosh, why did they turn you away? So you kind of have that hook already that's there. Then I would go on to say what I said earlier, which was I found my hairstylist by seeing a Black woman on the street and tapping her on the shoulder, and then hearing the common story of, oh, I have my hairstylist who lives over there, who's a friend of a friend over there. And so that kind of resonates with some people, saying, get it, I totally understand it, if they understand the industry. And then when I'd go into talking about the multifaceted complexities of the hair care industry, at least in North America, I would bring my mom into the story. So then I would say, currently right now, at least within Canada, cosmetology schools don't teach hairstylists how to work on Afro curly hair texture, believe it or not. And then I would say my mom, when she immigrated here, she went to cosmetology school, didn't learn how to work on her hair texture. So even though she was licensed, she didn't learn how to cater to her current clientele. So she just worked out of her home and kept going that way, but decided not to work in a salon because she couldn't cater to them. And so that's where I bring in that story. So it's in levels and in steps, but depending on your audience, that's kind of how I would navigate saying my story. But when you think about in business, sometimes you don't have all the time in the world. So you have to really pick and choose what makes the most sense. And you have to read the room as well. Like if you're seeing their eyes are darting off to the side and they're no longer interested, then maybe cut to some facts and some numbers that they might intrigue them or get them excited. If you see they're nodding their head and they're intrigued, then you can start pulling upon more of your personal story so that they can feel this connection with you as well.
Absolutely. I think your intuitive nature is a huge part of storytelling, and also storytelling is selling. So being able to craft your voice into multiple different packages for the right situation. So kudos to you again in terms of being able to understand, like, you have multiple different personas to sell to. What story are they going to resonate, and what is their voice that aligns with them?
Correct. Yeah.
With that being said, with so many different stories, how do you effectively measure what is, doing well and what isn't?
So from a business lens, typically, at least for us, that translates into our signups and our usage rates, and those who engage with us. So the stories depend on who you're speaking to, of course, but the way that we measure it is word of mouth. Like if we start to see that a lot of people are knowing of us, and they're like, oh yeah, I heard of you over there, and like, oh yeah, Be Blended, or oh Eileen, I remember you from this, and I remember it stuck with me. That's kind of how you can tell if your story is really resonating with people enough that they actually tell someone else about it. So you're kind of creating that network effect, which is really helpful in business and just as your brand is being built. Another thing as well is if you're measuring specific metrics, if you do have a social media platform or you have social accounts that you're engaging with, if you start to see more people are growing on there and engaging with your content because of a story you either told online or in person, that's also a good indicator. But ideally you want it to all translate to sales and making some money. So you kind of are building this trust through the word of mouth, the network effects, the people engaging on socials, people knowing about you from not even meeting you yet. And then now you seeing that you've built trust in the brand, and now people are paying for what you're offering.
Absolutely. No, 100%. And I've definitely seen your social presence. I saw the launch reel.
Oh boy, you did?
I did see it.
Oh,
it's very engaging. You knew what you're doing.
You.
I love it. I love it. So I would say in that case, like, new entrepreneur, Black woman in this case, let's talk about what is one piece of advice you would give them in terms of building a story and being effective?
Well, first tell a real story, you know?
It sounds like simple, but really that's what it is. That's what it is.
Right? It's sometimes a eureka moment for people. Like, I should probably tell something that's real. Because I think sometimes, especially when you get so intertwined with the world, you want to come off so strong and people remembering you. And I climbed this mountain with only one sandal, like all the randomest stuff. But the reality is, when you actually tell something that's real, that comes from your heart and your lived experience, the passion shows in and of itself. So now you're conveying this emotional connection to whoever's listening to you or watching you. And that's a good start to start your storytelling. Advice that I would also give is practice. It's okay to stumble a lot in the first few times. You're learning how to speak to different audiences. You're learning how to convey the right message in a finite amount of time. Or if you have a lot of time, you know how to use that time without putting so many filler words or kind of deviating and coming back. So my main points of advice is tell an authentic story that you can show passion in, but then also find a way to make sure that you connect with your audience and are able to bring some sort of relatability to them.
Absolutely. I think that is, you hit the nail on the head for that one. Like we kind of talked a little bit earlier about if you're not passionate about what you do, that also makes it harder. Yeah. And ultimately, if you're not passionate, people are going to pick up on that very quickly. So search within.
Yeah,
search within. I'd love to know more about some case studies and how it relates to pitching and your storytelling. Could you talk more on that?
Yeah, absolutely. So, some people draw the parallels between the two, but storytelling is essentially pitching. And so something for us, and what I'm so grateful for with Be Blended and also being the CEO of it, is that I get to pitch all the time. And so earlier in the days of Be Blended, I learned what it is to put a pitch deck together and to kind of find a way to make my storytelling, per se, concise and related to my particular audience. So thankfully, we've won a lot of pitch competitions over the course of Be Blended's life. More recently, we won first place at a pitch competition in New Brunswick. Never been there, right? Like
I'm like, what? New Brunswick has pitch competition? I'm sorry. I'm like, if you're from New Brunswick.
We love New Brunswick. We love New Brunswick. But I won a pitch competition there, and it was so beautiful to see everyone's eyes light up. Their jaws hit the floor when they realize how big of a problem we're solving. And that only comes from knowing your story and how to tell it correctly. We're actually flying out to Vancouver next week to pitch again at another competition. I know, very grateful. At another competition. And this time the pitch is different, the audience is different, but it just goes to show when you can actually say your story well in a concise way, that you have now opportunities to pitch in front of audiences that also give you money. And so for early stage startups, when you need the money to keep going, this is a really great skill to hone so that you can propel your startup forward. So that's something I'd like to say. Another thing I think as well is just knowing when you tell a story that you can now elongate it or like bring it to something really small. So if you know your story well, you can say it within a minute to the right audience. You can say 3 minutes, sometimes even 10, or even over a conversation over food. That doesn't sound like you're just pitching at them, but rather talking with them. So it's a way that you can start to be malleable with the way that you tell your story. But pitching goes hand in hand with storytelling.
In those situations, like, you know, you said pitching for investors versus pitching just, you know, at the dinner table. How do you switch between the seriousness and being casual, and how to not hard sell yourself versus a soft sell? How do you approach that? How do you know, you see someone, it's worth saying your pitch, but you don't want to come off aggressive? Yeah.
You got to read the room. And what that means is, when there is a grant application or a pitch competition, you have to say all the things that make you great. So sometimes as people, we like to be really humble, which is phenomenal, okay? However, you do have to sell yourself when you're in a position that you should sell yourself. So when I say read the room, if you're in front of a panel of judges and they're judging how you speak and talk about yourself, that is where you're talking about all your numbers, your traction, your story, all these different things. But now if you're sitting across someone at a dinner table or at a social gathering, you kind of need to start to go on slowly. So I would always say, like, ask about that person who you're speaking about. Learn about them, because honestly, the goal is to be interested in them, and then they eventually typically would return the favor of saying, oh, what about you? And then you would slowly go into, I'm the co-founder and CEO of a company called Be Blended. Been doing it for this amount of years. Really, really passionate about this space. And when you say that, they'll see you light up typically. And then you kind of go into, are you aware of this space? And then it becomes dialogue. There's like, actually, I have like someone who's experienced this issue, or no, actually I have no idea, like tell me more. That tell me more is an invitation. And so you hope that invitation kind of allows you to continue to unravel what it is that you're doing with your company. But then at the same time, giving you these moments of humanizing the fact that you're a business owner and bringing them into the statistics in a nice and gentle way. But overall, read the room and make sure you find ways to connect with who you're talking to.
Absolutely, and I think that goes full circle to what you said earlier in terms of being able to mold your story. So pitch competition, if you know the judges going ahead into time, great way to do research on them and understand, okay, if you're doing a pitch to investors that are mainly tech, then obviously they're going to have certain specifications that they're looking for, as opposed to maybe a crowd or a casual audience where, again, they're going to heavily lean on emotional pitches as opposed to the hard sell of these are the numbers and this is how we're going to attack this industry. That's amazing. Yeah, next, I think I would love to know more about storytelling in branding, because as much as there's pitching and being able to voice and tell your story, it can also be done visually. So how have you told your story through visuals?
Yeah, so I would say it comes from I like to always say humanizing your brand or humanizing your company. And so the way that we've done it is we've been showing up. So we've been showing up at events, BFN, other ones as well, to show face within our communities that we're trying to target. So not only are they seeing you, but they can start to match this person with the company. Another one is also, I would say, finding ways to do things in conciseness. So what that is the world of social media in particular is very like, we're like squirrels.
Yes.
We're like, next, you're like swiping through. And so you've had to find a way to hook them in a very short period of time. And so I've found that we've been learning, like I'm not an expert at this, and I've learned through the years, but there's a way that you kind of hook people in and give them a little bit of advice or some knowledge or information. And then you continuously keep doing that in different pieces to make it one big thing, but it comes in small chunks. So I would say just showing up and being consistent, but then also finding ways to bite-size your story to build a brand. A brand isn't built overnight. So you kind of have to give yourself grace and knowing that certain things will work with certain people. Certain things might only work in a particular season. Maybe hopping on some trends and bringing it into how it relates to your company. Those are good ways of going about it. Something I also want to add as well that I think is really important is that you don't have to regurgitate all the information at once. So going back to speaking about how do you kind of know your audience and speak to people differently, but then also building your brand. Some people have a tendency to just say everything, like we raised this amount of money, we have this amount of people, we have this amount of thing, I did this, I did that. Like you're kind of saying so much, and there's a beauty in knowing how much to say, when to say it. The good thing is if people actually are engaged with you the first time, when you follow up a second time, you can actually give them more information because you can kind of scope out who's intrigued, who's engaging with you. maybe going back to building your brand and your audience, if you kind of like have a snippet of something that's really interesting, they'll hook onto it and maybe look forward to when you post something next or when you show up to the next event. If you're speaking to, let's say, investors or judges on a panel or whoever, you give them like maybe the stuff that really stands out, but then you can share more in a follow-up of, oh yeah, I also didn't mention this and I thought you'd be intrigued about it. So you can kind of, build
on
that. Exactly.
Yeah, you gotta piece by piece. We're building a house.
Yeah, lay the foundation.
You're gonna find out what's next.
Yeah.
Subscribe.
Like, comment, and subscribe.
You know. When it comes to building your story, how do you balance authenticity and persuasion? Because those are a fine line to maintain that level, but also you're trying to get a job done. We're trying to make a sale. We got to live life. This economy is something else.
Yeah.
So how do you approach that situation?
Yeah. So when it comes to authenticity, I always tell people to share a lived experience. Typically, when you share your own lived experience, it flows better because you're just talking about yourself. You're telling what's going on in your life. You're telling about your past or future. And so you don't feel as robotic with it when you're telling that story. So I think that will ooze authenticity by telling your own personal story or experience, or someone of a loved one, or someone that's close by, or maybe hardships in a workplace, like something that's personal to you. So that builds, I think, trust with the other person, because sometimes people are skeptical. In this day and age, everyone's like, I don't know if I believe them. But if they can see your passion through you telling an authentic story or true story, they kind of innately begin to trust you. And when it now comes to persuasion, I like to say that they go hand in hand. Like, you're building trust from sharing a real story and showing real passion. That brings them to this trust aspect where now you can start pulling in maybe numbers or facts that are true, and they now think, okay, not only is this person passionate about it, but whoa, these statistics are so interesting, or wow, this market is huge. Like, I can only imagine what more can come from this. And so it always just starts from being true to yourself and sharing a story that you experienced, to build trust so that when you say these numbers, that they actually believe you and are more compelled to tell someone else about it. And now for them, they walk away saying, wow, I learned something new today. And there's more awareness that you're bringing to that person, which is great because they're knowledgeable now. They have knowledge from you, from simply just saying a story.
Absolutely, absolutely. Once you've built that trust, how do you maintain it?
Ooh.
That was a tough one. It's a tough one. It's a long road.
Yeah, I know. I love it. It's such a balancing act. So I wouldn't say it's hard to maintain trust, because you should just stick to your word when you say stuff. So when you say you're going to do something, or you say you're going to follow up, put it in your calendar or something, put an alarm on your phone to make sure you reach back out to that person, or you send that email, or you connect them with that person you said you would. That helps maintain the trust. But the thing is, though, like, you just have to be very meticulous about who you're going to maintain this trust with. So one thing I like to say is that as entrepreneurs, we're handling so much. We're worrying about ourselves, our team, our customers, our own mental well-being, so many different avenues. And so in order to have trusting relationships, you need to also prioritize them. So something that I do is definitely following up with everyone that I speak with and try my best. Sometimes you have to give yourself grace because there's so many people that you want to follow up with, but sometimes it always doesn't pan out. Of course, you hope that you get as many as possible so that trust is there and established. When it comes to your customers, don't say anything that you can't do. So if you say, yeah, we're going to show up at your house and do this, or we're going to help you in this way, or we're going to make you this amount of money, make sure you can, because now not only are you now worrying about trust within who you're talking to, and I guess, and your customer in this case, but now it's also affecting your brand. So if you now don't have full trust with who you're speaking with, they'll now associate not only you as, you know, the executive of your startup, but now they'll see your brand as untrustworthy. So it's a balancing act. I keep saying to give yourself grace, because a lot of us are first-time founders as well. But a lot of the times it means sticking to your word, moving forward, giving yourself grace, and then following up accordingly.
Absolutely, and that's awesome. And I think about Be Blended in the sense of, okay, we have all these Black hairstylists. I think the stigma within the community is that we go to a hairstylist and it's like a 50-50 chance on whether this person is going to be there, or you show up and there's like 10 extra deposits put on there or something of that sort. But with Be Blended, you essentially have a platform that's vetted. So not only are you doing that on your own end for storytelling, but you're also uplifting the community within your platform to say, these are legit people, we've looked at them, and we're going to have quality all around. So that's amazing. Yeah.
And even I want to piggyback off of that as well, is that it's so important to do due diligence, but then people are doing due diligence on you. And so when you say like, oh, like there's Be Blended, that you're kind of vetting, you're trusting, it also takes a lot of work from you as a founder to create that trust. And so if anything, something I always like to say is that you have to be patient at times. And a lot of it is holding people's hands and knowledge sharing, and people getting to know you. So when they know you, they trust you. You're not just now this salesperson, but you're actually someone who cares about them. So as long as you show you care, people typically will respond by saying, oh, this person actually sees me and sees my needs and wants to help me through this business. And that's typically how you make a better bond.
Absolutely. Sales is very underrated, and you have to basically learn how to be a friend and listen to their problem over speaking.
Yes.
And then obviously incorporating the story. Yes.
Because we're always so, we tend to like to talk about ourselves, but especially when you are a founder and you're talking to people that are going to be paying you, or people that you can have partnerships with, you need to find out what their needs are. And that comes from letting them talk, not us. So
I'd love to know, 5 years from now, where do you see Be Blended?
The golden question.
Question.
Where do you see yourself when you grow up? Oh my goodness, it's so multi-layered. So a lot of the times, every time I talk about Be Blended, people think women. They're like, okay, the salons or the freelance hairstylists. And then the lovely men are like, what about us? What about the men? The barbers? And so we plan to do so much. So of course we hone in on the Black hair care industry for particularly women or men with locks, just longer hair, or those who want wig installs and things like that. But then we eventually plan to branch into makeup as well. So different skin tones and shades. Unfortunately, we are neglected sometimes in the industry. And so that's another avenue. Definitely looking into also the film and television industry as well, and getting plugged in, and then crossing over finally to help the men with the barbers as well. So it's just so multifaceted, and I think there's so much more I want to share, but I also want you guys to wait and see and follow us. Absolutely. And then see us kind of really stick to what we're saying and how we're expanding to hopefully build trust, and have you guys root us on as we continue growing over 5 years.
Absolutely. What you have so far, honestly, I'm sold already.
Thank you.
Absolutely. Where can people find you?
Ooh, so many different avenues. So you can either add me on LinkedIn at Eileen Agada. So maybe you'll see my name, AILEEN AGADA. With Be Blended, you can go to our website. So www.beblended.ca. You can create an account as a client or hairstylist. We'd love as much user feedback as possible. So we're currently going through that. As well as Instagram. We're on Instagram at beblended.inc. And we're hoping to create other social media platforms as well. So you'll stay tuned to see what's next.
No, it's going to be some good stuff. And if you need help, I'm your girl.
Yay.
Content marketing.
Perfect. I love it. Black people helping Black people.
Yeah, we're rooting for everyone Black.
Yes. Isn't that built by us
for us.
Oh, you got to plug yourself in too. Where can people find you?
They can find me on Instagram at Erica Tiwa, ERITIWAA.agency, AGENCY, or Erica Tiwa Agency on LinkedIn.
Perfect.
Yes.
And that's a wrap.
Like it.
Okay, good night.